Let me welcome all of you to this uh, session on wind and solar power markets around the world. This session would be for almost 1.5 hours, and there are some presentations being made by various experts in the field. So this presentation is about a rooftop project. This rooftop project has the lowermost rate for rooftop in India. And more importantly, a large number of these projects have been successfully completed. I must share that while India has had a lot of success in ground-mounted projects, there has been not too much success in terms of rooftop projects. We have a target of 60 gigawatt for rooftop for ground-mounted, against we've already achieved 40 gigawatt, whereas for rooftop against a target of 40 gigawatt, we achieved only 5 gigawatt. So one of the reasons is that rooftop is still relying on the capex route. The opex route has not been successfully implemented as yet. So we had successfully implemented the opex route, where the beneficiary does not make any investment at all. The entire investment is made by a developer, and the beneficiary only consumes power, and that is at a rate that is far lower than the utility rate or the DISCOM rate. So the chart in front of you shows the comparison between the prevailing DISCOM rate, which is the taller one shown in green, and the shorter yellow one, which is the solar rate, which the beneficiary got. Now, the interesting part is that the beneficiary made zero investment, and they got such huge savings. So this model has been applauded a lot, and now NITI Aayog, that is Planning Commission in India, is trying to implement this all over the country in setting up of rooftop solar projects on health institutions all over the country. I would just give you an idea of how the rate. So this we had. So going back, I would say that we had various tenders. Each category of projects, or each categories of buildings, had a different tender and a different rate. So, for example, the first one is higher education. So, colleges had a different rate, police stations had a different rate, etc. So, the summary is this: that you see the average capacity of around 300 kilowatt. We got low rates. The next category is again bigger buildings, but owned by the state government, not the central government. We got slightly higher rates. And the last category is state government buildings with rather small buildings. So here we got the higher rates, but even these rates are almost 1/3 of the utility rates. So really it was a huge benefit to everyone. These shows the benefits. Then we had a second round of tender where we got even lower rates. This is the lowermost rate in the country. Basically, the features that we had, I would not go into details. The broad point being that whatever are the uncertainties or the risks that the rooftop developers see pertaining to the project, we tried to minimize them so that the developers could see a risk-free project and come and invest in those projects. So we had a separate tender for each category of buildings. So, for example, the first entry here is 290. So 291 government colleges was one tender. The medical colleges was one tender, etc. So each category, each buildings which are of a different similar category. So the size was roughly similar. The owner was roughly similar. They were brought into one category. Then we created a data room. So, for example, the college consisted of 207 colleges. So the data room had 207 folders. And each folder or each college had this information: the Google coordinates, the indicative solar PV array layouts. I would show this example. So, for example, this is one of the colleges. So, for 207 colleges, each college had a similar sort of a detail in the data room. So, there was a pre-engineering design that you can see. So, you would see a tree there. So, the shadow of the tree is falling. So, there are no panels proposed there. And at the bottom, you would see that how many inverters are needed. So in this project, 4 inverters were needed, 247 modules were needed, and 817.8 meter of copper wire is needed. So the project had this much detailing, so which made it very easy for the investor to invest. The numerous other features that are there, but they are broadly focused at reducing the risk and uncertainty of the developer. The last point, for example, we provided tied loan, that we provided that there would be a facility of a concessional loan from World Bank, ADB, IRIDA, and the developer, if he wishes to procure that loan, can avail that loan. This is an example of the loan terms that we had. Then we had a lot of interaction from the bidders. We took their inputs very seriously, and whatever suggestions they were had, we used those suggestions to try to improve the tender and to make the project safer for the developer. The basic idea is that if the project is bankable or safe, or if the risks and uncertainties are mitigated, then the developer can get debt, and he can get debt at low rates. Secondly, we can welcome investors then who have expectation of very moderate returns on investment, because there are a lot of funds in the world, pension funds, sovereign funds, etc., which are available, uh, and which have very expectations of very low or very moderate returns of investment. They don't want skyrocketing returns, but they want that the returns are assured. So we should be able to welcome such projects, developers. Furthermore, when large number of developers who are otherwise not interested in projects in developing countries come and invest in such projects if the risks are mitigated. Uh, these are examples of the pre-bid meeting that we had, and the inputs received from the bidders during these meetings were incorporated in the bid. And then we had a very expeditious signing of the power purchase agreements. So, like all the power purchase agreements of colleges, medical colleges, engineering colleges, we had a meeting of the principals one day, and all the power purchase agreements were signed outside. So, on one day, we signed 291 PPAs of um, colleges, engineering colleges, medical colleges, etc. Uh, so, and now all the projects have been completed. An example of the project that has been completed. I am Indore and Central Academy of Police Training. They have completed their project and are getting power at rupee 138 paisa, which is less than 2 cents. This project was with some subsidies. Even if we were to have a project without any subsidy, we would expect a rate of around 3 rupees, so which is around 4 cents. The interesting part is that the rate of rooftop is almost the same as that of ground mounted project. And this has been achieved through mitigation of risks and setting up a project with robust project preparation. I would also like to share with you that now the Niti Aayog uh, has is implementing the same project through a project called Subeh. Uh, so this is Sun's Blessings and Health. So the idea is that the similar learnings would be used to set up solar rooftop projects on health institutions around the country. Niti Aayog and World Bank are together implementing the project. As I mentioned, it's called Subeh, Sun's Blessings and Health. And we aim that throughout the country, we would have solar projects run uh, without any investment by the health institutions, and where the health institutions of the country would be making saving from day one. Uh, and this principle of implementing an efficient PPP, we aim to replicate all over the country, and Niti Aayog and World Bank will be partners in this project, and to be implemented through support of all the states. The broad idea being that um, you can bring projects to fruition by interacting continuously with the consumers and the bidders, and implementing risk-free, viable, bankable, safe projects. Thank you. I would now invite the next speaker. Uh, is it Zishan? This is Zishan Ashfaq. He will be talking about wind and solar power projects, I think, in Pakistan. Zishan, can you start, please?
Thank you very much, Srivastava for having me here and for the introduction. I'll be talking about the wind power market in Pakistan. Although, I would briefly touch upon solar as well, but, that was not part of my presentation. Let me start sharing my screen and let me know when you can see it. Is it visible?
Yeah, we can see Zishan. Zishan's works.
Okay. So tomorrow I'll be discussing about the Pakistani power sector, just a brief overview, and then the wind power market in Pakistan and the trends that we have seen over the last many years and the future outlook. So talking about the power market in Pakistan, at the moment, the current installed capacity is around 35 gigawatt, and most of it is, dominated by thermal power generation, and that represents around 60% of the share, followed by hydro, that is around 28%, and that is followed by nuclear, which stands at around 7%, and then renewables, which are wind, solar, and bagasse, and in total they represent 6% of total power generation capacity in the country. And if we talk about the annual energy generation, the trend is the same. Thermal is around 60%, followed by hydro, which stands at 30%, and then nuclear and renewables. And the peak demand is around 27 gigawatt, but due to system constraints, the national grid operator can only supply 23 gigawatt. And currently, the GDP growth forecast for the current year is 4%, whereas the demand in electricity is around 10%. And that we have seen in the first 4 to 5 months of the current financial year. This demand is because because of the slowdown during the last year because of the COVID pandemic. Talking about wind power, the theoretical potential in the country is around 346 gigawatt, but it is just a theoretical potential. The resource-rich area are in south and southwest of the country, and the Jimpeer KT Bandar wind corridor, which is close to Karachi alone, has a wind potential of around 60 gigawatt, but due to land utilization constraints, only 11 gigawatt of that is economically viable. And currently, all the operational wind power projects are located in the same wind corridor. But now the government has also started prioritizing the southern western part of the country, where the wind resource is even better. And in the coming years, we will see, many projects coming online there as well. Talking about the installed capacity, currently we have 1,337 megawatts of wind power installed in Pakistan. The first renewable energy policy was announced back in 2006, and the first project got online after 7 years of the announcement of that policy. Because in the beginning we really didn't know, how to go ahead with renewable energy development in the country, because the sector was mainly dominated by hydropower and thermal generation before that, and the government entities were mainly involved in power generation. But since 2002, in fact, the private sector was encouraged to invest in 1994, but it started picking up pace in after 2000s. And by January or February next year, in a couple of months' time, another 610 megawatts of wind power projects will come online, and then the government plans to organize the first round of auctions, and the volume will be around 5 to 600 megawatts. And that too is expected to take, the auctions are expected to take place in the first quarter of next year. If we look at the cost trends, talking about the tariff, when the first project was installed, the tariff was around 14.6 US cents per kilowatt hour, and the latest tariff that the National Electric Power Regulatory Authority has given for a wind project is around 3.25 US cents per kilowatt hour. And in the last 8 years, we have seen a remarkable reduction of around 80% in the levelized tariff of a wind project, which is quite remarkable, and it has basically outpaced the global trends as well. And if we talk about the EPC price, the reduction is around 60% since the initiation of the wind power market in Pakistan. The difference of 20% between EPC price and the levelized tariff is mainly because of the reducing cost of finance that have also contributed to the lower levelized tariff of wind power projects in Pakistan. And if we look at the future, the incumbent government approved Alternative and Renewable Energy Policy 2019 in November 2020, and a target was set to achieve 30% of renewables in the total power mix of Pakistan by 2030. It is 20% by 2025 and 30% by 2030. And the latest approved indicative generation capacity expansion plan somehow reduces that target to 21%. Initially the target was 30%. Still in the policy document, the target is 20%, but the capacity expansion plan has basically reduced the target to 21%, and this 21% includes only wind and solar. And the government has included hydro in the renewable energy portfolio as well. Therefore, the target for wind and solar have been reduced, and for that of hydro has been increased. And in the next 3 years, we will see around 3 gigawatt each of wind and solar projects coming online under the new policy framework, which is the Alternative and Renewable Energy Policy 2019. And before, there are certain additional projects coming during the same time as well, but these are the targets set out in the policy. So this was briefly the market status of wind power in Pakistan and the outlook. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, I just sent my presentation to the mail of Stephen Gedinger and Mr. Jamil.
If just send the presentation, okay. Could that be put on the screen?
My presentation of the renewable energy in MENA countries. This is the theme of my presentation. And the MENA countries, they are 19 countries.
Mm-hmm.
And they are account for 60% of the world population and 60% of oil reserves, and 45% of the world natural gas. So
Sure.
these are the wells under the floor. And now we have ambitious targets to translate it into combined 80 gigawatt of renewable capacity. So this is the target now for the region, to go for 80 kilowatt of renewable energy capacity. The 23 countries are spreading from the Atlantic Ocean to the Arabian Gulf with different percentage of renewable energy. But to make a nutshell, this country has abundant sunshine and empty deserts, and they are running short of water. So solar energy and the green hydrogen plus water desalination might be the solution for the renewable energy in the region. This is spreading from the west to the east. Some countries have wind and solar, like Morocco. Some countries have solar and hydro, like Egypt. Other countries have oil, which is nothing to do with renewables, and natural gas. Plus, they have a strong solar radiation, which is not utilized. This is the stage. Many Arab countries have starting with solar power. Solar power, like in Morocco, Noor and Atlas, and like in Tunisia, and also in Algeria, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait. These countries have CSP projects and PV projects. And the new trend is to get hybrid wind, hybrid PV and CSP. If we go now to my country, Egypt, Egypt has now 30 megawatt of generating capacity and only 6 gigawatt of renewable. This is 20% of the country renewable energy capacity, and the 20% actually 10% for hydro, 3 giga, and 3 giga for wind and solar. In Glasgow, the president announced that Egypt will go by 2035 for 42% of renewable. Then we have a huge market to move from 6%, 6 gigawatt, the present stage, to 20 gigawatt by 2035. Then we are inviting solar PV companies and wind farm developers to come and make use out of the plan of the country so that we can meet the 42% by 2035. We are now very humble number, which is 3 giga. 3 giga wind and solar, 1.5 and 1.5. If we add it to the 3 giga of hydro, this is 6 out of 30 gigawatt, so it is 20%, which is 10% of it is from hydro. Then the country capacity now is 10% from wind and solar. To jump to 42%, and the only increase, we are not going to get another Nile or another hydro, to get 32% from wind and solar. This is the challenge for the country. The biggest PV plan has been done in Aswan with 1.8 gigawatt, and another one Komombo in October 19, and 200 megawatt expected to be completely. Wind farms are across the Gulf of Suez and the Red Sea, and there are plans to get wind farm east and west of the River Nile. The country also have many desert areas is very humble on CSCP. We have only 20 megawatt of CSCP capacity in Kuraymat solar farm. Then I try to move to the big countries which has very high penetration of renewable. This is Morocco, where we have different projects like Mazen, Noor, and Midlet. And now Morocco have 38% of renewable energy capacity by renewable. And I consider Morocco to be the pioneer of renewable energy in the region. And they are working in 4 dimensions. They have capacity building, and they have local industry, and they have legislations, and then they have the project's implementation. CSCP and the combined to hybrid is 2,000 megawatt of the projects by Noor Kwazazat and CSCP and CPMPV. And the beauty in Morocco now, they are embarking on very ambitious green hydrogen activity between Morocco and Spain, or not only Morocco, Morocco and Mauritania, through a transmission line from Gibraltar to Spain, and to get energy exported across the continent from Africa to Europe. So this is one of the links of exporting solar energy as electricity, VDC, or as green hydrogen in pipelines to Europe. In Oman, on the Arabian Gulf, there is now plans to export solar energy by ships to Rotterdam port. And there are studies on this dimension to go from from Sohar, a port in Oman, and make electrolyzers, and then we get green hydrogen to be compressed and cooled, and then coming by vessels to be shipped from Sohar port in Oman on the Arabian Gulf to go to the harbor in Amsterdam. And actually the problem also is water, because green hydrogen needs energy and water. And many of these Gulf countries, they don't have fresh water. Then we should go for electricity generation by PV or CSCP, and then water desalination. And then we have the combinations as green hydrogen to be shipped. The story of Saudi Arabia is different, as they are one of the biggest oil exporters in the region. And now we have NEOM project is to go for green hydrogen capacity, and this is in an island. This is a floating project. The same story with United Arab Emirates as to go for CSCP, and in Dubai has been mentioned in the tender. The lowest prices of a kilowatt hour is 1 cent coming from in PV in Dubai. Plus they have Shams Dubai, 125 megawatt of installed capacity for commercial and industrial building design. DEVA, which is Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, is trying to get construct floating solar PV plants in the Arabian Gulf just to save the area. And this is Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Parks. So this is the story. In Abu Dhabi, where we have Master Institute and we have the headquarter of Arena, they are getting the biggest solar park, Noor, which is 1.78 gigawatt. This is Emirates. And the story again is to desalinate water and to go for green hydrogen by electrolyzers projects. And this is in Emirate, Ras Al Khaimah, and so on. And then if we move to one of the GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council, Kuwait, they have in Shajaya to get integration of 5.7 gigawatt of CSP, 4.6 of PV, and only 0.7 of gigawatt of wind into the energy mix. So actually the region, if we, in nutshell, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Arabian Gulf, mainly they are busy in solar energy, whether PV or CSP, but with cheap prices of PV, then the dominating is CSP. And very shortly with Jordan, Israel is trying to make 5 gigawatt of PV plants in Jordan. This was signed last week. And then to get green electricity through the cable from Jordan. And then Israel in the back is going to make desalination from the Mediterranean water and give back water to Jordan. So two-way flow. One direction is to get solar electricity from Jordan to Israel, and the other dimension is to go from Israel to give water for the arid land of Jordan. These are the story, and Iraq is still not in very good position. Algeria is having 5.6 gigawatt PV, 1 gigawatt CSP, and 2 gigawatt of wind. And again, they have some biomass. So these are the area. And this is stage in Algeria. Bahrain having something similar. And to go for the region. So to make the long story short, many studies has been done with Dutch universities like TU Delft and Jülich Institute in Germany to try to export solar energy to Europe, so that there is a piece of the pie of having green hydrogen as southern neighborhood policy. Arab countries are neighbor to southern part of Europe with abundant of solar radiation. So many projects are now to go for having electricity, solar energy exported as electricity or as green hydrogen. And not only that, in view of the skyrocketing prices of fertilizer, many new projects are coming with from Escatec, Norwegian company, try to make green ammonia as one of the byproduct of solar energy in Ain al-Sokhna, in Egypt, and in different places. So the name of the game is green hydrogen through pipes, or green hydrogen on vessels, or green hydrogen as urea or as electricity in cable. But on my country, on Egypt, I invite many Indian companies to come for the new jump of from 20% to 42% of renewable energy by the year 35, so that we can go further in the direction of carbon neutrality. And I thank you for that.
Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for your words, Mr. Osman. Just had a small question. I thought it would be relevant. That how would you compare the cost of renewable energy to the cost of power from hydrocarbons, which are so easily available in MENA region? in India, we have seen that renewable energy really got a push only after it became cheaper than coal-based power. So how do the rates compare in the MENA countries?
Actually, due to the increase of natural gas prices on the last days, as many of the Egyptian ports on the Mediterranean Sea are exporting non-stop compressed natural gas to Europe, and the prices are increasing. And on the other hand, solar energy is very competitive in price and on caring for the quality of air. So this is the point. And plus, in a country where we have 100 million people and we may ride short of food, to get green ammonia from solar energy, this might be one of the very promising projects. And I have been monitoring that since 1960. There is hydrogen industry in Egypt, in Kema fertilizer company near the high dam, but the driving force were hydro energy, where there was abundance of energy and no electrical load. Now the story is upside down, and we have power plants, but the news on my side that proven reserves of natural gas from the Mediterranean fields and so on might not be very rosy, that for the long term that we should shift or make paradigm shift from natural gas to green energy, especially on the isolated or offloads, but with congested cities of 20 million cities and a lot of population, then we are forced to go for fossil fuel unless we spread in off-grid applications for wind and solar and for electrical cars and water pumping, because many of the desert has underground water 50 or 60 meters, and we should pump them. The only solution is to go for wind or solar pumping. In the countries, there was a small wind turbine, mechanical ones, 1960s, but now only we have the 2 or 3 megawatt wind turbine in some places, and I should monitor that a special wind mine on the Gulf of Suez has a capacity of 90 gigawatt of wind. Very good wind sites, and what's existing now only 2 gigawatt of wind. So we are looking forward for many world players in wind energy to try to exploit it, and then we have the chance from wind and solar, like the case of Morocco, to go for green hydrogen, and then our next neighbor is Europe, which are looking to make contracts on that dimension.
Thank you so much. Could we have the next speaker now?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such a learning experience. Thank you, Bilal Usman. Thank you so much. Could we have the next speaker, please?
Share, it's working. You see my slideshow? Hello?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, your presentation we can't see as of now.
It's not open. I don't understand why.
Well, I must be honest that I also struggled for a few seconds. I'm sure it would come
Не
up.
работает.
No, this is the last presentation.
Acha, okay. So then can we have some questions if anyone would be interested to ask any questions? We have some few minutes left. If there is anyone interested, we can, or perhaps we could have some discussion amongst the panelists. Zishan, I would be curious to know that with the I mean, the power demand that exists in Pakistan, is there a great deal of acceptability for wind power in Pakistan?
Well, acceptability is there, and in fact, wind together with solar is now the most competitive source of new electricity generation in Pakistan. But the problem right now is that there are so many hydro and coal projects in the pipeline that are in fact stopping uh, the wind and the solar power projects to basically get the importance which they deserve. The acceptance is there, and government is also cognizant of the fact that wind and solar are now the cheapest form of new electricity generation. But there were certain decisions that were made in the recent past, and certain coal projects were given go ahead, and you will be surprised to know that Pakistan is among the few countries which started developing wind and solar before started developing coal technologies in the country. But now we have a 4 to 5 gigawatt of coal pipeline, and that is somehow stopping wind and solar to take over. I mean, wind and solar's share will continue to be there, and in fact, under the new indicative generation capacity expansion plan, when it comes to candidate projects, no other technology is in the picture other than wind and solar. But we have a pipeline of around 20 gigawatt of committed projects, largely dominated by large hydro, coal, and some LNG and nuclear projects that are somehow hampering the growth of wind and solar in the country.
Zishan, so looking at the present and projected demand of Pakistan, do you think that the new upcoming power plants of conventional sources, they would be like enough to meet the present and projected demand of Pakistan?
The indicative generation capacity expansion plan, IGSAP, as we call it, it gives out basically the list of projects or the technologies for the next 10 years, as the capacity would be added during the next decade. We are certain that the projects that are in the pipeline wouldn't be able to meet the growing demand in the country. Therefore, all the candidate projects, that have been picked by this IGSAP, which uses Plexo's software, has only picked wind and solar as the candidate projects. And as the demand rises, we will see more and more wind and solar in the power mix of Pakistan.
Because we had a similar situation in India where the excess capacity in thermal has really been limiting the increasing acceptance of solar and wind, because at the cutting edge level, at the utility level, there is resistance to renewable because they already have tied power purchase agreements for conventional power. So that has been a challenge. So I would believe that you would have a similar challenge for renewable in Pakistan as well. Because we faced a lot of this problem in the last few years. It's only, I think, in 2014 that Central Electricity Authority in India said that there should be no more new thermal power plants. So after that, at least the new thermal power plants has stopped. So that has given a fillip to renewable.
Yeah, I completely agree what you have just said. And the problem with us is that some of the thermal projects, they will be operating at a negligible level of utilization by the year 2030, and we are still seeing some thermal projects being installed in the country, and we also see in this IGCEP that some of the thermal projects, among them are the most efficient, RLNG projects. They will be working on a capacity utilization factor of less than 20, which is not wise, and the government should avoid this gas and coal build out.
Any other panelists would like to raise an issue or discuss anything? Any more questions from anyone?
Yes, comment from my side, from Galal Osman.
Please.
The situation in Egypt also, we have got the modern Siemens supercritical solar thermal plants. So now the installed capacity is 50 gigawatt and the load is only 30 gigawatt. So the country have also transmission system all over the places. So they are promoting fossil fuel from power plants unless they have the problem of shortage of natural gas. But the sky is big enough to go for wind and solar and green hydrogen all over the country. Thank you.
I suppose Peter would come in here. Mr. Peter Ray. Mr. Peter Ray.
Yes.
You would like to come in, please?
No, not at the moment. Thank you. I was just interested to listen to who's. I don't know what's happened to Galal. He was speaking. I heard Zishan also. While we perhaps wait for Galal to come back.
Yes.
He's back. Okay. I was going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Galal's seems to be muted.
Mr. Galal? Mr. Galal Osman?
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I think he's there.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Mr. Peter Ray. Mr. Galal Osman is there.
Yes, Peter.
But Galal, is Galal coming back? He was. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I think he's there. Yes.
If he can continue. Just to explain, I've been trying to get an idea of what's happening in each of the halls and to listen to some of the matters that are taking place and to try to see how many speakers have not turned up and generally to get an idea of what sort of day we've had. I was just wondering if you'd like to comment.
Well, I was there in this session, so the presentations were interesting. Galal, of course, spoke about MENA. Zishan spoke about wind in Pakistan. So, and if we have no more questions, then are we? Do we have any questions or discussion amongst the panelists? We still have a few minutes left. Anything would like to discuss among the panelists, or any questions from others?
For me, if I may, we are looking for green hydrogen for water desalination and for export and for going to the world to zero carbon. So this is a trend because our countries have very vulnerable and with climate mitigation and with the increase of Mediterranean Sea, we're going to lose of land, and this now fertilizer prices has been skyrocketing. So we would like to concentrate as monitoring what has happened is to use the solar energy to have green hydrogen to get clean energy portfolio by wind farms and by solar plants, whether PV or CSV, in many places which are off grid. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions you would have? Any other questions or any point that the panelists would have?
I have a comment from my side to go for hydrogen, green hydrogen. As we know, it needs electricity and water. And many places which have a strong solar irrigation does not have water. Then we are in the dilemma of making water desalination, like in Saudi Arabia and in Oman and Qatar and Bahrain. Then it is two sides the problem. One is to generate renewable electricity and then to get renewable water so that we can complete the cycle of green hydrogen, whether for export or for local utilization. And now the story is economy, but the case of increasing prices of natural gas give a very good chance for building electrolyzer industry and fuel cell industry in parallel to water desalination, and then this can be the solution. And as I mentioned, the case study of Israel and Jordan. Israel is building 5 gigawatt in the desert of Jordan and get green electricity, which is called the green electricity, and in return is a blue water where the high technology of desalination of the Mediterranean sea water gives the water back to the arid land of Jordan. And this is very good example of mutual cooperation to get energy stability and food stability. Thank you.
Garal, I was wondering that if a green hydrogen needs desalination as well, then is it still cheaper compared to electricity from natural gas?
It will be very shortly comparable with natural gas within very few years because prices of natural gas are increasing, and my resources telling me that the natural gas from the Mediterranean fields is not that stable. They are getting lower output from the natural gas fields. And on the other side, water desalination technology is advanced and the electrolyzer and fuel cell are advanced, then they can be competitive in the very short
I would like
term.
to add that natural gas also could adjust its prices with the competing prices of solar. But anyway, these are things that have to unravel and would be known over time, because at certain places, natural gas is not really the cost of production that is very high. Natural gas increase in natural gas prices is largely opportunistic, and if solar plus desalination becomes actually cheaper, then natural gas might reduce. But anyway, these are things that would be known over time. Any more question or discussion point among panelists? Any
Yes,
comments from any
my
panelists?
comment is natural gas pipes will carry also green hydrogen.
Oh, yes.
So we are going to make use of the piping system of natural gas and going for green hydrogen. And I should mention that in parallel, oil groups are trying to go for blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is coming from oil and ethanol, and this is another trend to go for blue hydrogen from fossil fuel. So it is trade off, but we are going to get CO2, and then we should go for carbon storage and carbon sequestration, and to get places to store CO2. And this is why I'm very much in favor of green hydrogen, not blue hydrogen. This is the trade-off for now. Hydrogen only. We are talking on green hydrogen. And then the second one is to go for blue. Thank you.
I would add that just as pipelines could be used, similarly, LNG and transportation of hydrogen, they could also be similar technologies. So like we have LNG terminals and ships for LNG transportation, RLNG, perhaps we could have similar things for that also.
I should report that we have already 2 ports for exporting natural gas on the north of Nile Delta, one from Damietta and one from Etco, where a fleet of vessels, floating vessels carrying natural gas are being exported to Europe. And these are the trend now we are going to use for exporting green hydrogen. And this is the way, because we are already on working on exporting natural gas by cooling it to minus 300 degrees and having as liquefied in vessels and in the ports. So many vessels per week are heading towards Europe, and we know now Europe was cold weather and for heating, so hydrogen natural gas may be a solution for many applications.
True. So I think we have passed our time, and I would thank all the panelists for the wonderful discussion. I would add that it has been a learning experience for me, and I hope that everyone who would listen to this would really benefit. And I would again thank the organizers and all the panelists. Thank you.